Since it's been legal for players and agents to negotiate contracts, NBA franchises have been trying to get away with sketchy deals. Players with one strong season might get major contract extensions, but we've also seen teams sign average players to massive extensions just so they can stay competitive. Shady contract dealings are a part of the NBA's history, so keep watching as we discuss the worst NBA contract decisions of all time. First off, at number 10, Gilbert Arenas' extension after the firearm incident. It only makes sense to begin our list with Gilbert Arenas, who had one of the funniest contracts in NBA history. We ranked this deal at number 10 for several reasons. He's more famous for being known for being the player who put a set of firearms into an NBA locker room, rather than for his gameplay on the court. Just before the Wizards extended Arenas for a further 6 years, he had only played in 13 games since he suffered a knee injury in the 2007 season, which he hadn't fully recovered from. But this contract didn't work at all. It was a complete failure because Arenas only played for 2 seasons before being traded several times before retiring. The gun incident made this agreement even worse since, after a gambling fight with former teammate Javaris Credington, Arenas brought firearms to the locker room. To make matters worse, Arenas didn't look too apologetic about his actions when the NBA started an investigation. Coming in at number 9, Ben Wallace wasn't worth the massive extension in 2006. Although Ben Wallace was a terrific player and deserved to be in the Hall of Fame, he was losing his edge in 2006 at the age of 31. But the Bulls decided to give him another shot by signing a 4-year, $60 million contract. Even though they already had Tyson Chandler, who was only 23 and had 5 years left on his contract, a younger, cheaper, taller, and superior version of Big Ben. Now, we aren't trying to say that Wallace wasn't a good player. His All-NBA defensive team skills and on-court leadership were amazing, but only when he was in his prime. The team eventually realized their mistake and quickly transferred him to New Orleans in exchange for PJ Brown and J.R. Smith, both of whom the Bulls also ended up kicking out. Big Ben became a Cavalier a year and a half later, and the Pistons would have been extremely happy with the trade since they ended up advancing to the conference championship without him. But the Bulls didn't learn from their mistakes with Wallace since 5 years later, they handed Wallace's underperforming colleague Richard Hamilton way too much money. Moving on to number 8, Allan Houston was a financial burden in 2001. Allan Houston was an all-star player for the Knicks who would have deserved his 2001 contract if it was offered a few years before. Houston was 30 years old and more of a supporting star than a franchise player at the time of the agreement. However, the Knicks believed that signing Houston to a massive 6-year contract was going to work out for them in the long run, and we aren't sure if the Knicks considered he would be 36 by the time the deal was completed, but they still went through with it. This marked the beginning of a decade full of poor business mistakes for the franchise. Houston's stats took a freefall after 2 successful seasons because of a serious knee injury that ended his career. He ended up turning into a huge financial burden for the team as a player in his 30s, not the franchise player that Knicks had expected he would be. But unlike the Bulls, the Knicks knew not to make the same mistakes again. And so, the Allan Houston rule was included in the contract, which takes injury insurance payments into account with contract terms. Next up at number 7, the Lakers fumbled the bag with Timofey Mozgov. Timofey Mozgov's 4-year, $60 million contract in 2006 was the first contract in a year filled with the most absurd contracts. In the same summer, the Los Angeles Lakers also signed Luol Deng to a $72 million contract, which is insane considering the amount of salary space they had after Kobe Bryant retired. But the Luol Deng deal doesn't compare to the contract with Mozgov, since this was simply unforgivable. This is because at some time in his career, Deng was an all-star, whereas Mozgov was always a backup center, who was only recognized for getting savaged by Blake Griffin and not for his play. Mozgov started the 2015 finals for the Cleveland Cavaliers, but the Lakers didn't need him once Kobe Bryant left. Mozgov's career averages of 6.8 points per game and 4.9 rebounds per game are disgracefully low for a player earning $64 million. We're just glad that the Lakers are now managed properly because a deal like this shouldn't ever happen again. Coming up at number 6, Biyombo disappointed everyone. The 4-year contract signed by Bismack Biyombo was yet another lousy contract in a series of absurd agreements made in 2016. In Game 3 of the 2016 NBA playoffs against the Cleveland Cavaliers, Biyombo had an incredible 26 boards, which made the franchise think he was a far better player than he was. A single good game for him was worth $18 million. Even the fans of the Raptors started thinking that he'd compare to Dwight Howard, but they quickly realized that this was not the case. Biyombo lacked offensive skill, and even his average of 1.3 BPG falls short of that of a highly established defensive player. Biyombo's career averages of 5.1 points per game and 6.2 rebounds per game show how important consistency is in establishing a player's worth. Moving on to number 5, Joakim Noah got $450,000 per minute played. Naturally, the New York Knicks are included on this list once more, and of course, it's because of the whole scenario with Joakim Noah, a former All-Star center. The Knicks signed Noah to create a super team despite his limited game action in 2015. Noah's time as a starter was over, and anybody who knew anything about the NBA knew it, yet the Knicks didn't get that memo and instead signed him for $72 million. He played fewer than 100 games for the Knicks and had no impact on the team at all. After spending years with the Chicago Bulls, Noah had taken a major hit, but to make matters worse, he admitted to the media that he partied a little too much when playing for the New York Knicks. The fact that a highly compensated athlete struggled to maintain focus only proves our point about how inefficient the Knicks organization is. And to think that Noah's deal wasn't even the worst in 2016. Up next at number 4, Chandler Parsons' short 2016 run. Chandler Parsons had, by far, the worst contract in the horrific year of 2016. Before the Houston Rockets decided not to pay him, Parsons was a promising young player with the team. He eventually joined the Dallas Mavericks before suffering a knee injury that halted his 2015 playoff run with the Mavericks. Parsons was playing pretty well for Dallas. Before choosing to opt out of his contract and take a ridiculous $94 million deal with the Memphis Grizzlies, Parsons had knee surgery. Parsons continued to play fewer than 100 games throughout 3 seasons and was not a player worth the salary he was receiving. As soon as Michael Conley and Marc Gasol left the team, Parsons essentially put an end to the Grizzlies' grit and grind era. Parsons' contract offended many people, and he received over $100 million in compensation for his inaction, which takes this deal to the top 5 in our list. Following up on number 3, Eddie Curry is another Knicks franchise failure. The New York Knicks once again appear on this list, which is not surprising. The Knicks organization gave Ed Curry a 6-year contract despite having issues with an irregular heartbeat out of pure desperation to please supporters and inspire hope. The Knicks looked past that and agreed to part with their second-round pick to complete the transaction, which was no joke. When Curry's Knicks career finally unfolds, it is a complete disaster. After weighing in at over 300 pounds, Curry was removed from the rotation only 3 years later because it was clear he wasn't a dependable player. Although Curry could score well in the post, he was incredibly sluggish to react on defense and didn't seem to want to be a strong big man. The Knicks' history throughout this team was a complete mess, and it still isn't any better. Coming in at number 2, Joe Smith's 1997 scandal. The intense debate surrounding Joe Smith's deal is a major factor in its ranking as the second worst in NBA history. Smith was going through a major NBA scandal by accepting $86 million in cash over 7 years from the Timberwolves management. When the information got out, league officials severely punished Smith and his team. The franchise couldn't create a successful team around superstar Kevin Garnett because they lost 4 out of their 5 first-round picks. Smith was penalized since he lost all that money, and Minnesota only offered him a bargain that was less than half as much. Joe Smith was selected first overall in the 1995 NBA draft, but his bad attitude destroyed any chances of him being a great NBA player. Finally, at number 1, Bryant Reeves shouldn't have been in the NBA. Bryant Reeves' deal from 1997 is without a doubt the worst in NBA history. Reeves was obviously out of shape for a man making close to 8 figures while playing in the league. Maybe it was because he was the first pick in the 1997 draft, so the Grizzlies felt they needed to keep him locked up and sign him for 6 years, but that didn't work out in their favor. Reeves retired after just 395 career games with the organization because he was not NBA ready. Reeves played in the league for 3 seasons, averaging a career-high 16.3 points per game in his 3rd year, before fading to only 8.3 points per game in his last season. It's safe to say that this is the worst contract in NBA history with how much of a wreck this deal was. That's a wrap for this video. Which contract do you think was the worst? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you at the next one.